It's a somber day here on the Blue Collar Boxing Podcast. I'm Luke from Biloxi as always. I want to talk about the passing of Chuck Norris and how I'm really feeling it, how I really miss him, and what it means to me and why it means to me what it does. Now, to a lot of people out there, Chuck Norris was a meme, right? He was some of the most prolific internet jokes. The beginning of sort of that phenomenon was with Chuck Norris. And he embraced that, and that's pretty cool. But in a lot of ways, it reminds me of George Foreman in that a lot of people of a certain age, remember George Foreman as the grill guy. They don't remember that he was two-time heavyweight champion of the world. That too can be said for Chuck Norris. I'm 41, on the way to 42. A lot of guys my age can relate to two things growing up. Those two things in the 90s, the early and mid 90s, were this: VCRs, which played tapes. The new kids today call them VHS. No one in the 90s ever called a tape a VHS. Even if we knew what that was, no one ever said it. And divorce. Those were two things that really defined a generation of kids who grew up in that era. We had VHS, we had Blockbuster, and our parents were most likely divorced. I think probably more than half of the kids I grew up with had divorced parents. Even if it wasn't that high, it was still much higher than it was for previous generations. And I was very lucky before my parents' divorce that I grew up in a two-parent home where both parents loved me. And they couldn't work it out for whatever reason, and that was it. And Dad had to leave. And even if your father, like mine, was a good guy, he was no longer around every day. And despite what feminism will tell you, or what, even some of the guys on the manosphere side will tell you, divorce drastically affects young children and young men specifically. And it was hard for me. I was 10 at the time. No matter what they say, there's a part of children, even if it's subconscious, that will believe, at least in some way, the divorce was their fault. And if it wasn't their fault, it was their responsibility to fix it. Those are two different things. Something cannot be your fault, but it can be your responsibility to fix it. And all of a sudden, there's a vacuum of a male presence in your life, even if he's there to pay child support, even if he's there every other weekend and on certain holidays. We all remember the drill, man. It stresses me out even talking about it. It hurts. And one of the respites that we found, a lot of us of that era, was our VCRs and the movies we would rent. And Chuck Norris was a big part of that. He was a big part of a man standing up, doing the right thing, and saving the day, which is what a lot of us young boys wanted to do when it came to our parents' marriages. We wanted to find a way to save it. Now, I'm not talking about, if unfortunately your one of your parents was abusive or something like that. I don't want to make a false comparison. I'm talking about just the fad of divorce where two people weren't happy anymore and they just decided, screw it, we're going our own way. And they believed that it wouldn't affect the kids negatively. That's the type of divorce I'm talking about. So if you were a victim of some sort of abuse, please don't take this the wrong way. But there were so many of us that were not in an abusive marriage or children of an abusive marriage that it hurt. It hurt. I still see pictures. I still see home movies. Even the Christmas before they left. Well, I can't watch it. And not to go too deep into divorce, because this video is about Chuck Norris, there's studies that say, psychological studies, that divorce can affect a child even more drastically than the death of a parent. Now, I don't wish one of my parents dead. That's not what I'm saying. But divorce, you can have closure on death. A lot of times you can't have closure on divorce. I'm 41, almost 42 years old. I'm still dealing with the collateral damage of that divorce. It's affected my own marriage. It's affected my own children. It's affected relationships with my sibling and others. Never goes away. So the respite that we found, a lot of us young boys, was our VCR and TNT and TBS and USA Network, where a hero would come in and do the right thing. And Chuck Norris was a lot of that to a lot of us. There were others too, of course, Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Van Damme and others. But Chuck Norris had something a little bit different. And sure, some of his movies were campy and there were plot holes. When you're 10 years old, 8, 9, 10, 11, you don't care about any of that. You care about the good guy winning in a way that we as young boys hoped that we would win. Maybe we could save the marriage in some way. That's what he meant to so many of us. And then when he sort of left the movies and landed a massive hit show, we had Chuck Norris every Saturday night. We didn't have to go to Blockbuster anymore. And we ate it up. In a lot of ways, yeah, those were kids' shows. Those were kids' movies. I watch them today. They hit differently. But I'm reminded of how I felt when I saw it the first time. And even if your father was a good man, a solid man, he wasn't there anymore. Even if he was in the same town, which in my case wasn't the case. We moved. So I saw him sporadically throughout the year. And men, young men, boys, we gravitate to heroes. We gravitate to guys that step up and do the right thing. And it's a metaphor, of course. It's not exact. We're not going to all go join the Delta Force or be karate champions. But maybe it manifests itself in ways like, I'm going to work today. I'm going to finish that certification so I can make more money. I'm going to get that apprenticeship so I can, be an electrician, be a plumber. I'm going to pay the bills on time. I'm going to make sure my kids have everything that I can possibly give them. And a lot of that onus we didn't get necessarily from our fathers. Even if they were good men, they weren't there. We got it from our VCR. And Chuck Norris was a tremendous part of that. And I'll never forget in Sidekicks, it wasn't very long after my parents' divorce, when he came down and said, why don't you and me go win this thing? There wasn't a boy in the room who didn't go, yeah, let's go win this thing. And it wasn't just a frickin' karate tournament. It was just maybe we could get our family back. That's what he meant to me. And, a lot of people say don't meet your heroes. I never got to meet Chuck Norris, but I will say I regret that, because every person I've known that has met him has had nothing but amazing things to say about their interaction, even if it was brief. I'm sad I didn't get to meet the guy. He meant a lot to me growing up. We're down here in my man cave. I have posters of him on my wall. This is before he passed away. Um, this is supposed to be a boxing channel. I don't want to bleed over into the manosphere, but there were a lot of men, boys in the 90s who were desperate for strong male role models. And some of us were only able to get that in our VCR and on cable. And today they use terms like toxic. That's all a bunch of bullshit. No, we weren't going to go, save POWs in Vietnam, but maybe we could learn to get up and you go to work. You get up and you do the right thing. You tell the truth. You work hard. You be a role model for your children. And Chuck Norris was a big part of that. Thanks, Chuck, for all the memories. We'll miss you. I'm sorry to your family. Guys, let me know. Let me know what your favorite Chuck Norris memory was. And let me know how his passing has affected you, because it sure as hell affected me. Take care and God bless.